few feet, obviously 6 inches up there above
Right.
the trees, it drops off really good. And it doesn't look like it drops off good if you're just looking
Yeah, I
at
thought we were going like 10 to 12.
Right. Those are the spots that
Oh, there he is.
got him.
Yep.
As I was saying,
Dude, are we just going to double up the whole day?
as I was saying, those are the spots that I like. Like, we got 2 fish in a minute at a time.
Oh gosh, no, get in.
Alright, well, those are the spots I like for a crankbait.
Dude, that's hilarious.
I half know what I'm doing sometimes.
This watercolor looks incredible for a crankbait on these main lake rocky walls. Oh my gosh. Not only is it muddy or heavy stain, it's settled. There's no mixing, there's no debris, no pine straw, leaves. Some of these rocks, you gotta make multiple casts. These big spots, big largemouth, even on the main lake, will pull up real close to some of these rocks. Even when the water temps are in the 40s. Right now it says 45. Sounds about right. I'm throwing the Spro. This is the MD55, I believe. It's the one that, it's the bigger body. Oops. Bigger body crankbait that dives like 4 to 8 feet. Because I want to get real up close to these walls. Tick those rocks. I ticked that one a little too much. But when it's this muddy, I generally go shallower. So if I was fishing like this with the deeper, oh, get out of there. With the deeper Spro rock crawler, I'd be getting hung up even more. It's not anything bad about the bait, it's just how I'm fishing. I'm gonna be fishing really, really close. One of the most important things when you're cranking like this is you got to be active with your rod placement and active with the speed of your retrieve. This is not a technique where you just sit down and chunk and wind. I want to be hitting those rocks. I don't want to be getting stuck like I just did. I don't know what that was I got stuck in, by the way. It must be like a rock and a tree or something. Anyway, I want to be hitting these rocks, but I don't want to get stuck. So there's times where, like on that cast, I got real close to the bank, hit the bank. So I'm going to keep my rod tip high, and then I'm going to move my rod closer to the bank until I can feel the rocks. And I may speed up my retrieve a little bit. Oh, bumping into the rocks now, just hit one. Stop, let it rise up. Make another cast. So if I want my bait to run shallower, I'll keep my rod higher. I may reel really slow. If I want it to get down deeper, I'll drop my rod tip. I may pick up the pace just a little bit on my retrieve. So I'm trying to be real active with both my rod and my reel to maximize each cast. There he is. Little guy. Largemouth. Oh, largemouth. Oh, spot. Sorry. Spot, just a pale spot. Little spotted bass, just a little guy. The other thing when you're cranking like this, you pick a wall or a bank to go down, look for those little subtle differences. Like the rock type right here is different than this rock here. This is more scattered. This is much bigger. There's a little, area where the bank swings out closer to the channel, so kind of like a little point. Then there's like mini points on top of that point. And you can go down this bank and oversimplify it by just, putting the trolling motor down, casting, going down it. But really, when it's muddy like this, these fish want to get up and close to these rocks, and they will hide behind some of these little teeny tiny features and points and crevices, because they're all ambush points. I tell people all the time, like, when it's muddy, think of it like when you're walking around your house late at night or in the dark and you can't see. How many times you just go like walk over to the wall, put your hand on the wall to give yourself some sort of, spatial awareness of where you're at. I tell myself bass are no different. They want to get up close to these rocks or the trees, whatever cover you're fishing. Because I think it just gives them a better idea of just where they are versus out in the middle or off the cover, off the structure, and it's muddy and they can't really see because the visibility is so low. That should be a good cast, right where rocks come out, make a little point. I hit a rock. Come on, get out of there. Trying to worm it through these rocks. An old trusty bow and arrow. You don't want to get trigger happy setting the hook. A lot of these bites feel just like you deflecting off a rock. And with a moderate action rod, which is what you should be throwing a crankbait on, it's naturally not as sensitive as a stiff, say, jig rod. And there's a lot of bend. And that's intentional. You got little tiny treble hooks. It's different than a jig with just one big single hook. So my point is, it's okay to give them a second. If you've got a fish, there's a chance they've inhaled it. And if you've got good treble hooks like these Gamangatsu hooks that come on the spro baits, the fish has probably got it. You're gonna miss some, it happens, but you don't need to set the hook right away. You can pull these little hooks out of their mouth so quickly. Or you can bury those hooks or bury that bill of that crankbait down into these rocks so quickly. And these crankbaits aren't super cheap. It's not like they're on a drop shot or a shaky head where you can break off 100 in a day and be out $10. these are really good baits, high quality baits, premium components. They're expensive, so you don't want to be setting the hook on everything. Be real focused on what your rod and what your bait is doing. And I think it's really important to keep your rod 90 degrees to your line. I see so many people fish like this, and you're basically rendering your rod useless. You want it 90 degrees. I want to be able to see that rod load up if I hit something. And if I have a fish, I'll be able to see that rod load up. But also I could feel, movement. I could feel if they have head shakes or if it starts fighting, I can feel it and I can see it too. If you're paying attention enough, you'll see the difference between you hitting a rock and you getting a bite. I switched up to a square bill for just a second. I was getting hung kind of every cast on the 4 to 8 foot diving MD55. Just wanted to see the square bill, which dives 3 or 4 feet. See if it would come through the rocks a little bit better, but then stopped hitting the rocks altogether. So another thing that can really help is just having kind of an array of crankbaits to go through. I've got 3 on the front deck. I got the Bill Lewis square bill, got the Spro MD55, and the Spro rock crawler regular 55. So I can kind of cover 3 to 5 feet, 4 to 8, and then like 8 to 12. You don't need 3 rods like I have. There's some speed clips and things that are much better designed nowadays than they used to be. That'll let you kind of swap out baits and also not become like a weak point in your line. Some of those older clips that you'd like pinch together and hook on, like I've had those bend out and have had issues with those, so I don't like that design. But there's some where you kind of like wrap it around. It's almost like a rectangular shaped split ring, not quite rectangular, but a little bit longer. Not just circular, but some of those work really good and are really strong. See a little boulder under the water. Just casting this thing up there. If I see something I really like, I think it's important to make multiple casts. I've hit a rock or seen a stump and make a cast, don't get bit, but then on cast 3 or 4, end up catching one. So we've gotten away from like the bluff wall, steep bank. This is more of a rounded kind of mix sand, clay, rock point. And these are great spots for the crankbait. A jig too, the Picasso Little Spotty is perfect for this setup as well. With the crankbait, what I need to figure out though is how far up to the bank do I need to cast. It's not like I'm paralleling this. I'm trying to hit those rocks, but now it's not 3 feet off the bank I need to cast. I got to figure out where I need to be in terms of boat positioning but also where I need to cast and which crankbait I need to be throwing to maximize my bait's time in the strike zone. So I'm sitting in 20 feet right now. This crankbait only dives 4 to 8 feet. So on that cast, I felt rocks in the first maybe 10 cranks, and then it came up and off the bottom. And then in that case, I'm not fishing as productive water as I feel like I should. So I'm gonna take this deeper one, MD50. I'm gonna slow crawl it down there. And I push the boat from 20 into about 16 feet. My depth finder's at the bottom of my trolling motor, so in reality, it's probably 18 feet deep here. So I gotta factor in all these things to try to make sure that when I make a cast, I have that crankbait ticking the bottom, not digging the bottom to where it's getting stuck, but ticking the bottom for as long as possible on each cast. That's how you fish efficiently this type of technique. And I could tell I'm still not ticking it enough. I'm gonna bump into like 13 to 14 feet and then try to cast a little bit more parallel. Again, I'm active with my rod placement. I feel myself hitting the bottom. Feel this bait hitting the bottom now. It's perfect. It's ticking, but it's not getting hung. That's what we want. That's why it's called the rock crawler. You want to crawl it through those rocks. All right, so now that we're getting kind of back into this pocket, I got to be careful because this deeper diver is probably not the one I need. So I'm going to worm it through these rocks. I can already feel just it crashing into the rocks. So worming it through. I stopped feeling the rocks. I'm going to lower my rod tip. Start winding again. Just felt the rocks again. So again, by rod placement, by going real slow, I can effectively fish that bait without getting hung. And it is really shallow back here. But largemouth especially just want to be shallow. I've got a spinner bait in the rod locker I'm about to take out. Just looks like it'd be perfect back there. You may not catch a lot of fish going dirt shallow when the water is freezing, but you might catch a giant. I like catching giants. Oh golly, just got smoked. Yep. Hit it like a freight train. Little guy. Stop the boat. So now that was the first cast after I switched my bait, so just take notice. It's not like I'm just coming out here and throwing a, ow, geez Louise, dude. It's got some sharp fangs. It's not just one do-it-all crankbait, not a big one at all, so pale. But he absolutely trucked it. I thought he came off because he hit it and then ended up knocking slack in it. So a little bit in the winter, but really once we get into February and March, into the pre-spawn, look, you can see this pocket. This is a spawning pocket. Well, a largemouth that wants to spawn back here in April isn't going to swim to the other end of the lake. They're not as nomadic as spotted bass are. So a largemouth that kind of lives in this area, they're likely just sitting out in the middle on the bottom. I mean, they may move around, they may be on the point, but a lot of times they'll just sit in the middle of the pocket, middle of the ditch, whatever you want to call it, and just kind of wait for the water to come up. They know there's stumps and trees and laydowns and all sorts of stuff back there. So sometimes when you're fishing this style with crankbaits or spinner baits, it's not always about hitting the bank. You got to think, all right, where would that fish be? In April, if they want to get way back in there, maybe they'll be on the banks, but they may just sit right down in the middle. Again, it's cold. Water's 48.6 degrees. It's cold water. So maybe today with the clouds and the cold water, they may be in the middle on the bottom where it's 8 or 10 feet. And then if it were sunny, say we had a warm day, warmed up to like, in the 50s or maybe even 60, then maybe they would be back. Oh man, just got crushed again. Maybe they would be back on that log, in a foot of water. And I'll cast back there just to see. The good thing is, while you're fishing, a spot like this, I can fish all of it. I can, kind of break it down and pretend it's almost like a pond, like you could fish the whole thing. And by doing that, that's how I get clues as to what I should be doing. If I fish back here, hit these laydowns, really this one, the other one's just about out of the water. But if I fish in, a foot or 6 inches of water back there and get a bite, even if I think the weather would have them doing something else, that's a clue. That must have been a bite, because I did not feel anything on that cast. Kind of mix in some quick reels. See if I can get a reaction bite. All right, everybody, so here's some of the baits I was throwing in this crankbait video. Mostly Spro crankbaits. I was throwing a Bill Lewis a little bit as well. You will hear me mention a square bill. I'll talk about that one in a second, but mostly the Spro crankbaits. And the different sizes that we have are the 50 size, which is a little bit smaller body bait, and then we have the 55 size, which is a little bit bigger body bait. And we've got the regular rock crawler 50s. We've got the 50 DDs, which dive a little bit deeper. We've got the regular 55, and then the MD 55. So the different depths that I'm targeting here, the rock crawler 50 is a 4 to 8 foot diver. We got some different colors here. I think this is red bug, and we got spring craw here. We got burnt orange craw here. Let's see, we got, I think, green craw. This is spring craw again. So the regular 50s, they are 4 to 8 foot divers. It's these two here. And then the deeper, the 50 DD, is a 8 to 12 foot diver. With the regular 55, that is a 9 to 14 foot diving crankbait. And then if we go with the MD version, which is the same bigger body but the smaller bill, you're back into that 4 to 8 foot range. So I have a couple different options based on how deep I'm trying to fish. I generally try to go with the bigger body if I can, just cast a little bit better. But there's times where a smaller crankbait does seem to outperform a larger bill. But then really more importantly, it's the depth that I'm trying to target. So I've got the 4 to 8, the 8 to 12, 9 to 14. And then that day I was out there filming, actually the 2 days I was out there filming, I was also throwing a square bill. And this is the Bill Lewis 1.5 ATV, just a great square bill. The color I was throwing is more of like a sexy shad type color. I think this is called like chartreuse shad or chartreuse shiner. Really, I just want to be able to cover different depth zones. So when you're going down the bank, sometimes you'll see a stump, lay down tree, and you want to make a couple casts to that. That is where the square bill with a truly kind of flat bill is going to excel. And then when I am either casting up to these 45-degree banks or bluff walls, I can go with the deeper bill, deeper diving crankbait. And then some of those more transition areas or just kind of points or shallower areas, I'm kind of moving over to the 4 to 8 foot diver. The goal is to be ticking the rocks and not be stuck in the rocks. So having kind of an arsenal of crankbaits to try will just make you more efficient out on the water.